Dr. Pat Boulogne, welcome to the ROI Online Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So you're an author and you have a book with a title that I think that every person asks this question to themselves at least once in their life, if not many times. And it's, why are you sick, tired, and fat? That's, I think, such a great title that everybody can relate with, that one internal question they ask themselves all the time. Why did you name it that?
Well, because when I was looking, the original title was nothing like that. But what this title tells you,
Actually, I said sick, tired, and fat when it's actually sick, fat, and tired.
I know, it's okay.
Okay, well, let's start over. Let's start over.
Okay. All right.
Let's get it right. Thank you. You're so sweet. You didn't correct me, and then I looked down at my notes.
Well, you said you were recording, so I figured say like I was going to tell you that the title was. I go, wait a minute, that's not the title.
Well, let's get it right because it's so important. Why are you sick, fat, and tired? All righty. Here we go.
Right.
Dr. Pat Boulogne, welcome to the ROI Online Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
And happy birthday to you. Today's your birthday as well.
Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful day so far.
So let's make it really good. Now, so the folks that listen to this podcast, now you're an author, and this title of your book is really going to resonate with them because everyone, I believe, has asked themselves this question at least once in their life. And it's, why are you sick, fat, and tired? Where did that title come from, and why did you name it that?
Well, because I wanted to pick a title that could resonate with a lot of different scenarios. So a person, when I was looking for a title in my business group, said to me, I'm not sick, Pat, and I'm not fat, and I'm not tired. And I said, you know if you're tired, and you kind of know if you're fat because you can look in a mirror or your clothes don't fit you well anymore, but you don't know if you're sick. And because sick takes time to develop. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
You know, trauma happens in a nanosecond, but sickness does not happen overnight.
So you're a chiropractor. You're a certified functional medicine practitioner. You're also a certified chiropractic sports physician. And this is cool, you're an acupuncture physician as well. So you tell us, what exactly is functional medicine? Is it medicine that works?
Functional medicine is really, it's been developing for quite a while. In 1992, Dr. Jeffrey Bland, I saw him at a conference and it was like the dimmer switch went on. And I started following him very intently. And so when he explained functional medicine and how functional medicine has evolved, it's really about the person. It's about your bioidentity. It's about how you're responding to your environment, because you're not your DNA. You are how you are, responding to the chemicals that you use, the foods that you eat. And that changes your chemistry of your body quite significantly, so that if something is happening for a long period of time, then you're going to start seeing depletions, or you're going to start seeing more of a priority go on in certain organ systems.
So functional medicine, I've heard people talk about, like we might go to let's say we go to a gastrointestinal doctor, right? And then he prescribes a medicine, or she prescribes a medicine, and then we might go to a heart doctor, and then we might go to another doctor, but they're not really all coordinating together. and you're lacking like a quarterback or someone that's kind of coordinating an overall comprehensive uh, um, yeah, lab or plan over your overall health. You seem to have, we sometimes, at least in the American medicine world, we have these disconnected people that are coaching us, driving us, treating us for different diseases or different situations that probably would benefit if they could talk to each other more.
Well, the thing is that if you look at your health kind of like a Swiss watch in
Mm-hmm.
those organ systems, the brain controls and coordinates all functions, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have these organ systems that interrelate with each other. So when you do something for the cardiovascular system, then what happens is that it's going to affect some other system. It's going to affect or your digestive system. If your gut's off, it's going to affect what happens with your detoxification system. And so if your gut is damaged and you keep on synthesizing food out into your bloodstream before they're ready to go there, it has to go to the liver and it has to be processed.
Yeah.
And so when it goes to the liver and it has to be processed, then it's going to, like, when the liver gets overwhelmed, what happens is that it dumps back out into the intestinal tract and it comes back again. And then it gets stored, because when it gets to that overwhelmed point, then it goes out into the body and it gets stored in blood, brain, bone, and fat.
Yuck.
And it's deep. Because it's not something that's superficial. So then you have a bigger problem, especially with things like heavy metals, which even in a good gut can transfer out into the blood system pretty quickly. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. So if someone is to read your book, unless, leaders right now in businesses, they don't have a lot of time. They're busy. They've got all these things that are competing for their attention. And sometimes what you eat or your plan for your self-care or whatever goes on the back burner. I know sometimes I will defer an hour of rest to digging into something that I need, that's been bothering me, that needed to be done for a while. What are some of the things that people learn in your book that would help us be a better manager of our own care?
Well, one thing is that, is piecing out things that are important to you. So when you're looking at self-care, you've got to decide what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because what works for me and isn't necessarily going to work for you, isn't going to necessarily work for another person. So what works for me is really paying attention to my diet and looking at what foods I'm eating, what foods what I would pass on, and, things that never pass my mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and then, for somebody else, like a second thing might be, exercise. It could be, meditation. It could be quiet time. Not necessarily meditation, but it's like how do you get that reset to take care of yourself over a period of time? So it depends upon what someone's prototype is. So when I'm looking at someone's questionnaire that I'm getting back from the book that I wrote, I'm looking at how their health is patterning out. So I can see where the priority is and where the less priority. And so I can look at it and go, hey, you've got this going on and you've got a lot of high scores, but you have a priority that you've got to pay attention to and fortify at this point in time.
So
does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's, I think a lot of times people maybe read an article and they get inspired, like to eat more spinach, right? Because it has folate and vitamin B. And so we'll eat a lot of spinach thinking that we're doing ourselves good. But like for me, I don't digest the folate properly based on the labs. So I would have been self-diagnosing on a guess and not really achieving the things that I intended. And oftentimes we're just shooting in the dark. And so to have a process where they can come and fill out a form, get some diagnostics, you can start to design a map for them. Is that correct?
That's right. Um, so when you're looking at where somebody's weakest link is in their health,
Hmm.
it tells the big picture because it might not necessarily be where they think it is.
Yeah.
It might be something else, but I always, one of the things I always say is fix your gut, change your life. And so you've got to look at where to start to improve decrease less inflammation, because when you're adding injury, to something, like for instance, I don't digest beans. I can feel them in my gut for like 5 days, in the same place.
Hmm.
And so I just learned I don't want to eat them, and because I don't want to feel bad. And I eat foods that are easily digestible for me and do things with food. But you have to, there's lab tests that you can go do. There's like an allergy test that you can see what kind of foods that you're reactive to. And, so on that premise of like, I don't guess, I test, I look at what foods people gravitate to. And sometimes a lot of foods that you gravitate to are foods that you have sensitivity to.
Hmm.
And then learning like how to like not eat the foods that are the definite never eat, and the ones that you're reactive to, and take them out of your diet, so that over a long period of time, in the long run, you don't start having bleeding in the gut and that type of stuff.
We're so busy, and I noticed that thinking about what I'm going to eat today is like the last minute decision. It's something that wasn't planned. I'm just, okay, we have a little time here and then go get something to eat, but I don't really plan what I'm going to. Yeah, I didn't bring my lunch. I didn't do all this preparation. And so there's probably a lot of areas that are making me tired, or things that I'm not aware of that's making me tired. How would you coach someone to think more long game instead of short game, on how to start to figure that out and be a better manager over your diet?
Well, I think you've got to like know the foods that work for you and stock up on them.
So how do I figure that out?
Well, if you eat something and you get tired afterwards, then something that you ate you're sensitive to. Um, the fast way to do that is to go out and do a do a lab
Hmm.
on what foods you have sensitivity to that I was just talking about,
Hmm.
and finding out what those are, and then get those out of your diet. There's a really great free app out there. So like for you who doesn't want spinach or things that have folate in it, it's called Yummily. And Yummily is a free app. There's a premium version of it also, but for the average person, you can put any foods that you don't, that you shouldn't have in your diet. Like I tell people to stay away from sugar, flour, anything white.
Yeah.
Um, and just not eat it, and a lot of people will eat bread and it cuts their digestion, or they eat cold, they'll drink cold things, or they eat cold things, and they really are the type of person that really should have warmer things. So you really have to assess where that weak link is, and then you can design you know more personalized programs around that.
It's so hard because the American diet is full of all those white things
Mhm.
that you're telling us to avoid. It's like you really have to work hard to find food on the fly that doesn't have most of those ingredients mixed in.
Well, the Mediterranean diet for me is a diet that really works.
Hmm.
And how I up that game on that diet is I do a food combining type thing because I want it to be an anti-inflammatory diet.
Hmm.
So if you lump sum that definition up, it's eating proteins with vegetables with a little bit of fat. And so you can have swordfish with zucchini, and you can have, and maybe a small salad of some sort.
Hmm.
And that will give you, a whole diet. You'll feel, you won't feel hungry after you eat that. Because that's the problem, is that if you eat too many carbohydrates, your body will have a tendency, an hour later, you'll be hungry. You'll be back in the refrigerator. That's how you know that you've eaten too many carbohydrates, or your brain gets fuzzy.
Yeah. Brain
You know,
fog. Yeah.
brain fog.
Yeah.
And we all have had, all have had that. There's supplements that help, and David Asprey does a lot of writing about brain power and using, and being more on it. And so there's, when I was studying at a couple years ago, I was studying for a California board. And so because I was going to do a project out there. And when I went to go do that, I looked up what David Asprey, what he said. And then I looked at what I was already doing. And I only had to tweak a couple things in order to do that, because I wanted the endurance of how my brain was working. And to be sharp, for 3 hours when I was studying. And then when I went in to go take an exam, that I thought to myself, why am I doing this at my age? But it was the thing, it was great, because it really stretched those brain cells.
So what started you on this journey in the first place? Were you just someone that was really focused on their health, or did you have an event that made you really reevaluate?
I had a really great teacher in chiropractic school. And just previous to that, I had a friend from college who said, you would make a great chiropractor. And I said, chiropractors are quacks. And he said, oh my God, Patricia, what planet are you on? And so I ended up hurting my shoulder. I was in college and I was waiting on tables. And I kept on lifting trays over my head. And it just were like, I had poor posture and it just ate at it. So I went to this chiropractor and I didn't like him. Mm-hmm. And I went, wow, if he can do this, so can I. And then I went to chiropractic school and I had this very cool teacher for nutrition. And it was like one of those light bulbs going off again. And then I took that and understood that. And I had another mentor in chiropractic who always said, what you got that it isn't what you got. And so when I studied him, I had very, very big sensitivity to cigarette smoke. Uh-huh. I could smell it 2 cars away from me and I wanted to kill a person. Like, why are you smoking? And it's so bad for you. And so this guy took the edge off. He did a specific technique and shut off that reaction for my body to the smoke. And I went, wow, I want to learn this. Do you know how many people you could help doing this kind of work? Yeah. And so I incorporated his style of technique into my office and added in the more of nutrition component. And that's where I focused my energy on. But that's how like one thing led to the other. And that's how I actually became a chiropractor in the very beginning.
So what does that mean? What you got is not what you got.
Well, it means that you can have signs and symptoms. I call them Grim Reaper syndrome. Because we have like floaters that they tell you are normal for aging. They're not normal for aging. They're not supposed to be there. They tell you, like, oh, it's normal to have like joints that are a little bit, like stiff in the morning when you get older. That's not normal. I had a woman who was 82 years old that came into my office when I was on Cape Cod. And I asked her if, I go, do you think you're flexible? She goes, yeah. I said, well, how flexible are you? I said, show me. And she could put her hands behind her feet. I couldn't do that at that time. And I went like, wow, what do you do? And it was one of those, when you're thinking about like, it's what you accept as a new normal and what you don't. So if you have an accident, you don't want that new posture to become your new normal. That's how you keep on seeing people keep on leaning forward and more forward and such. And structure is so important. Structure is function. So if you don't have good structure, you can't have good function. And it goes without saying that, the 5 pillars of health, which for me are exercise, diet, good sleep posture, positive mental attitude, and properly functioning nervous system, which is the biomechanics, have got to all be equal pieces of the pie. One always feeds off on the other. So, what you got isn't necessarily what you got. And you're also your DNA. You're not your DNA. So if you are what your DNA is expressing in your environment. So if you have a lot of pollutants around you, then you're going to see other things, like if you're drinking water out of plastic, or if you, are cooking from the microwave and to, and heating things up in plastic. You just don't want to do that. It's not a good thing to do. It's not even a good thing to use the microwave.
So why is it that the common attitude towards chiropractors are that they're quacks? Why is that?
Well, I think that, there was a huge antitrust thing years ago about chiropractic, but there's enough research that's out there, and there's enough people who, have found really good results. I mean, I've had people who have had crawled in with pain and walked out smiling.
Mhm.
And I always think, did I know? It's like, well, I just look at right side, left side. I look how functional the body's moving, and where it's not functional is where I work on, either muscularly or I look at what the motion is. As your joints are all supposed to move, and all the big studies of that are done by medical doctors. So, when I go, going back to that, I love it when somebody, when they say that to me, I'm thinking, oh, I love duck. I love duck breast. It's very good for you. It's a smaller fat molecule, and it's good to cook your eggs in it and things like that.
So does your practice, or does your focus, are you very women centric? And obviously women are different and they have different stresses and needs in their life. How do you treat women differently than men, and is it pretty much the same? I'm curious.
Well, a lot of the diseases that used to be male diseases only, like the American Heart Association said, most men don't know that they have heart disease until they have a heart attack and die. And so, and that's a true statistic, 75%. And women, because of, getting out there and doing that stress, their numbers have statistically come up also. So I like dealing with women because I like to get them, to do more self-care. Like guys do that on a natural basis anyway, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But women always take care of their husband, their mother, their father, their kids, their dog, their girlfriend. They do something for everybody else, and they don't really always take care of themselves. So especially women who want to tackle and take on the world.
Right.
You find yourself at the end of the day depleted, if not in the middle of the day. And you're thinking, I need to lay down for 20 minutes and I need to meditate. Or I need to take a nap. I need to do something. So I help women in those cases get into what I call Einstein's time. And Einstein's time is a loose term for being in your vibe, and being in your groove. Because when you are in that space, no matter what else is going on, you're like the duck going across the pond with your feet paddling like heck, but you're cool, calm, and collective. And not only that, you have time to spare and you get everything done, and you have time for yourself.
So this self-care conversation, internal conversation that a lot of us have is like, we don't give ourselves permission, or we struggle with really carving out that self-care time. Is it that we're looking at it wrong? What are some of the things that you can teach us to have a good, healthy perspective of self-care?
Well, I think the first thing to do is you got to get off in Newtonian time. And Newtonian time is when you have your scheduled out, male, female, scheduled out 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 8:15, got a call for 15 minutes, check in with who, blah, 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 and you have a list.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in Einstein's time, you have that list. It just happens, and there's no stress. There's no I've got to get it done, or I've got to write this article, and I have my kid who's supposed to show up 2 hours ago and he isn't here. So my focus is different. So it's like learning where to put that purpose, intention, and focus on your day so that you can get those things done. So self-care can be a lot of different things for people. Like for some people, it's taking a nap every day for 15 minutes. It's just you can just lay down and not do anything, or just go outside. And what I used to do at my office is give my employees a rock. And I would tell them, take the rock, and when you get the rock on your workstation, it means that you are driving me crazy, and in a nice way, and go out and hug a tree. Take 5 minutes and just go breathe some fresh air and make, and then recycle, get centered so that you can come in and do that fresh look at whatever you have to do that day. Leave your garbage outside the door. So, self-care could be a bubble bath. I mean, women love to do that. I mean, it's like very rarely don't, but it's just like taking that time to do that. It's like, if you like to garden, grow a garden, do something that you can look at and that you can see beauty in and have some gratitude for. Tony Robbins used to do this interesting walk that, it would be like the power walk for walking with intention. And he did it years ago. And what I remember about it and what I do when I'm walking for like the first 3 minutes of it is I breathe in and I touch the end part of my fingers. And each one of these, as I found when I became an acupuncturist, are these points that are Jingwell points. And they stimulate those organ systems in your body, or the meridians in your body, like the lung, the heart, the small intestine, things in, large intestine, things like that. So that when you're breathing with that intention, like you're breathing in and then you're breathing out, then you have you're focused on your breath, which makes you have more deep breathing and more ability to exchange the right kind of air with your body so that you can be more focused and funneled.
So what caused your fascination with acupuncture that you went and got certified to use it in a medicinal way?
Well, I've always been interested in herbs.
Yeah.
And Chinese, not just Chinese herbs. There was, in my family lineage, my ancestor was according to what I've researched so far, was the apothecary to Marie de Medici and Henri Quatre in the House of Bourbon. And so when I went to go do this, research up in Montreal and Quebec, because Nicolas Hébert's son settled Quebec for France, I thought, when I called my friend up, I said, "Oh my God, you won't believe this. I go, this lineage, my DNA." And she said, "Oh my God, in 400 years, it hasn't changed." She goes, "Patricia, when you tell someone to take calcium, they go, 'How much?'" And because I like to put, for me, I like to solve those pieces of the puzzle, like that are challenging, and make it simple for somebody. I like to help people get unstuck and move forward so that they get better, faster results and are not spinning their wheels and trying to figure out, you talked a little bit about this before, reading something in a book basically and trying to apply it. And a lot of times that can be costly because it's not really dealing with the root cause of the problem. So I help people get to that root cause, find out what it looks like, and then what do I have to do to get it out of here? How much of a ladder do I need to get unstuck from here to get out, and how can I do it? What is the easiest way for me to do it? And, I get up in the morning thinking, how many problems can I solve today? Or how many challenging things? And it just, and my head synthesizes things, my brain just works in that fashion very easily.
So how does the needle therapy, how does that solve some of those problems? I'm really curious.
Well, there are points that are on the body, and there's also in the ear. So like if you looked at ear acupuncture, auricular therapy, the head's in the bottom and the feet's on the top, and then center is all the organs. So each of these organ meridians start either from the head or from the chest and go to the feet, and from the feet go back up, or from the arms they go back up to the head. And there's a cycle of how that works. And they're all connected to each other. So there's like one point that, can, if you wanted to treat the large intestine and the lung, there's a point on the arm about right where your wristband for your watch would be. That's a point that does that, so that they can work together. And you can, when you needle, there's a point that is, when I was treating a patient for plantar fasciitis one time when I was in school, and my mentor and teacher at the acupuncture college told me to put a needle in. and to the person's foot for plantar fasciitis and make sure I hit it all the way to the bone. And I went, oh, that skin's so thick, and I had my own block to that. And I really had a hard time getting that needle in initially. And he came in to see what I was doing, and he's just shaking his head. And he goes, no, Patricia, with the lovely Chinese accent, he put his hand over my hand on the needle, and I could feel the needle. I wasn't doing anything. I could feel the needle slide out from underneath my hand into this person. The person didn't yelp, didn't say it hurt. And my mouth was on the ground. I was like, oh my God. And then he told me what else to do for that person to make, so that you could help that crystal around the plantar fasciitis dissipate and they could get better. And when the person got up from this treatment, they had no pain, was able to walk on the floor, put their shoes on and walk out. And a month later, they came back for another thing. I said, hey, how's your foot? She never had a problem with it again. Mm-hmm. So it's just knowing how to make that circuitry. It's like a computer when you're trying to, or write a program. It's like knowing how to put the pieces of that puzzle together so that it fits. And thinking really outside the box, because a lot of in acupuncture, like for headaches, they treat the feet, so you're thinking, how does that work? And when you first start looking at it, and it's just, there's a lot of complexity to it. And then acupuncture really works much better when you're doing the herbs along with it. Mm-hmm. So if you're treating someone for low back pain, there's a specific formula for low back pain. There's a great formula for, for calming the nerves that I always call Chinese Valium, that has no side effects, and a great formula for help people sleep that doesn't have any side effects. You're not going to have any wake up groggy or not being able to function or think clearly from the get-go from when you get up. So sometimes when you're traveling like that and you have jet lag, it's a perfect thing to take for jet lag too. Great.
We're in this time of COVID, and I've listened to some doctors discuss the healing success that they've had in this. And so not to, dwell on the particulars, but there are certain, you would think, oh, I have to take a medicine. But listening to them, what they were doing was facilitating the body's ability to heal itself by making sure it had plenty of vitamin D, plenty of vitamin zinc, and other things. And it was something that, I don't know why, but our bodies do want to heal themselves. And so what you're talking about is facilitating the body's regeneration or the renewal by taking advantage of the things that are in our bodies already.
Absolutely. And in Chinese medicine, when you first diagnose, you diagnose things either being exterior or interior, mm-hmm. Hot or cold, excess or deficiency, things like that, or yin and yang. And in the case of any type of virus or any type of flu or the cold, so to speak, or a cold virus, it always goes to the back of the nose and always goes back to the throat. And the Chinese would say that's an exterior problem. And so an exterior problem doesn't necessarily ever have to enter your body. It could be handled at that level, so it never gets that far, mm-hmm. By doing some, typical things that you would do, like when you first have that sniffle, that kind of thing, like there's Chinese herbs that help do that. And there's things that I tell people in this day and time that I do that as my health hack. And one of those things is to take a cap full of cider vinegar at the end of the day and just clear the back of my throat. Mm. And I also take activated charcoal, on a regular basis, because I just want to make sure that if there's something along the way going down, I want it to have that charcoal to act like fly paper to do that. But the exterior, interior, how that goes in Chinese medicine is first exterior evil, and then it goes in, and sometimes it can come back out. So it's an in-between. And then when it becomes interior is when you start seeing like color changes, like in mucus. You start seeing color changes like in the, when you're like the phlegm that you're coughing up, it changes into green, yellow, and so you can tell how deep something is, by that. So when, I hear, it's people talking about, COVID and things that they do, you have to keep your immune system up so that if something happens and you have exposure to something, any virus, any bacteria at all, your immune system is going to kick in. A lot of people sometimes, and going back to the title of my book, that the sick part takes a while to, come up and to manifest. Well, a lot of people who have had big issues with, with COVID are people who have comorbidities like, heart disease, diabetes. They can be pre-diabetic, and there's something lurking below the surface, like in an iceberg, that you really don't see. And then when they get sick like that, or from the flu, it's like, they have this thing called a cytokine storm that just like blows them out completely, and then they're playing catch up because their immune system was weak to begin with. And they had this other thing going on underneath the surface, or it's known. And there's so many people in the United States that I see, and when I'm looking at numbers and that type of thing, that I'm always saying there's so many people sick who don't know it. Sometimes you can see it on their face. Sometimes you have to have more of a conversation and as such, but there's a lot of things that people they've done for such a long time that are their normals for them, like, eating at Burger King or something, and taking that and not making that change. It's just like, what do I need to do to eat healthy? Well, if it means like not eating anything fried, or if it means not eating potato chips, or whatever that food is for that person, sugars, any excess sugar or processed things, then that's what you do. You step up the bat. They say it takes 21 days to change, a habit. There's rituals people can do. You've got to be hydrated. A lot of injuries that I see when, in chiropractic are from dehydration, for instance.
So I always like to ask, what's one question that you never get to answer? People are interviewing you all the time, and I'm just curious, what's the question nobody ever asked that you wish they would ask?
Gosh, I've been asked almost everything, but I think that a question that, I would like to be asked is like, how, I would like to do more speaking, and be more present speaking and helping people understand the right side and left side of that aspect. I'm leaning in that direction because I want to have it to be known that, I want to help masses of people have the ability to understand, hey, I got a glitch in my health. Here, I know there's a venue for me to go to that's simple, and I can go do it. I can find out more information and find out where my next best step is, or who I have to talk to. And and people can use like my book, for instance, as a advocating tool. They can fill it out and be at the beginning of the year, or go to their doctor and, and say like, hey, here's, excuse me, here's my score. How does this relate to everything?
Yeah.
Because so many people go to the doctor and they get scared, they shut down, they don't ask the right questions. And if you don't ask the right questions, you can't expect to get the right answers. And then you're making decisions based upon that information. So I just think like how can we get more people have that information so they can do something with it?
So do you work with people remotely, or do they have to come into your office for you?
Well, I have done both.
Right.
I have in states that I'm licensed in, the states that I'm in, I like to see people. I like to have my hands on so they can get chiropractic care, acupuncture. I obviously can't do that over virtually, right. But I like to work virtually because I like to have the ability to, help a lot more people and help them find the doctor that they need to find, get the care that they need to get, and have information that they can follow up on.
So where's a great place for people to reach out to you and start to maybe, do you have a blog? Do you have, do you have a podcast?
I don't have a podcast yet, but I do have a webpage where my blog is, and that's healthteamnetwork.com. I'm on LinkedIn. People can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and that's how I think we met, was that way. And I have a different, Facebook page and Instagram, that people can reach out and see things that I've been doing. And for me, this is pretty much new because I was retired for 17 years, and I did a pivot and decided, when I was looking and seeing so many people who look so unhealthy to me, that I said, these people got to get a grip. They have to understand there's something else out there that can help them, live longer, live better, live healthier, move better, think better, that whole thing. And it's not that hard. There's simple solutions.
Well, it'd be cool if you set up a Facebook group, or I'm sure you would have a following of people that would become a member of a Facebook group and get to interact with you on a regular basis, even if it's remotely. I would encourage you to do that.
Yep. I do have a group. You can hear my dog in the background, right?
Yeah.
He is 14, and he gets all my wisdom from lifestyle medicine.
Yeah.
Adjusting, acupuncture, and the whole thing.
No, I have a puppy here, and she's the smartest dog in marketing as well. She just listens.
I mean, he's heard the story a lot. But I do have a business page on Facebook, that people can connect with me on that. And I have a lot of presence in LinkedIn. So for business to business and people who want to get a little bit more information that way. And I'm pretty consistent with posting with that.
Excellent. So that's Dr. Patricia Boulogne. That's Boulogne. You can find her on LinkedIn. Dr. Pat, you've been an excellent guest on the ROI Online Podcast, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. I love being here. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap.